Start recording.
All right, my friends, we do like to record this just in case you missed the class and you want to go back and see what we talked about. Perfect. Or what was that we discussed and you want to go back and kind of revisit it. So we always will have a recording for you each week. It is not mandatory that you review this. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about what strategic business etiquette is all about. All right. So I think we're good, but I put this in every class so we start off on the right foot, right? Cameras stay on. You're going to participate using your mics. Although Carlene is monitoring the chat, so if you want to, drop something in chat, that's fine. Please ask questions as we go through. And Carlene, you probably are going to have to tell me when they raise their hand. I'm not sure I'm going to see it on my end. So
Okay.
although there's not a cast of thousands in this class, you have two options to ask questions. You can either use the little icon on the nav bar, top nav bar, to raise your hand. And then, we'll call on you immediately. Or you can just interrupt me, which is fine. Okay. But please don't wait to ask your questions until the end of class because it's kind of useless. So if something comes up, you have to think about how would I handle, what would I do? How would you address those types of things? Ask them because they're part of this discussion. And as I mentioned to you last week, Carlene and I come from a business background, so we've got this experience, and only do we teach it, but we've got the experience and can help you. So cell phones off and close the door. I already told my family, don't bother me until 7 o'clock. So we'll see how that works. Okay, so and again, I put this in every week. Make sure this is all about having fun, guys. It should be fun learning. It should benefit you because there's something in it that you want to take away. There's something that you want to do with these new skills to behave, and I use that in quotes, differently. Okay, and so we'll talk to you about the backstory behind that. And then the key thing, practice and apply the skills, or it becomes an academic exercise, and that's not what this class is all about. Okay, so here's our course map. Last week we went through first impressions, and when Carlene talked about first impressions, it was a little bit of everything because it was kind of an overview of this course, but the focus was, whenever you meet people, you do make a first impression. So I want you to think about that because every time we have a new topic, it's going to set a first impression in a different way. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about strategic business etiquette, and then here's where we go for the last 5 weeks. Okay. All right. So what are we going to learn? So tonight is all about culture and cultural differences. So the first piece is really appreciating those cultural differences. And I like to start this with, and by the way, guys, if you downloaded the workbook, every slide has a page number on it and it refers to the page in the workbook. So just in case you're using those. So one of the things that we don't often think about is, how does cultural appreciation help us in business? And how does it help us build relationships? And how does it help us be better in our communication? So that's what we're going to talk about is, how we have to kind of be in tune to what that looks like. All right. The next one, we really want to look at the unique characteristics. And guys, when we did the research for this class, and I found these two examples, you will die when you see these because they are, well, let me put it this way. When I found myself on the communication styles, I was like, oh my God, now I know why I'm the way I am, because it was just like to a T. And then the last one is to really recognize how those communication and relationship characteristics really help to build those strong relationships. Okay. All right. So that's where we're going. And so when you're done, we hope that you understand how cultural influences affect communication and the differences in intercultural communication, which is kind of important. And most people think about that when my friends, when they travel abroad, but because here in the US, we've become so diverse, it is really important that we figure this out so we can be appreciative of other people's backgrounds and cultures. Okay. And then we're going to look at some techniques that we can use to make us better in our business communication. All right. So let's start with a discussion. And, you know, all of you don't have to answer, but I need you to answer at least once during this class. This is participation. Okay. So what type of multicultural communication do you have now? And let's start with that one. So what type of, you know, interaction do you have? Or is there no multicultural communication? I have none is a great answer. Or give us an example. What do you think?
I have none.
I have none. Okay. Thank you, Jacqueline. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? No? Okay. So this is kind of important, guys, because we want to make sure that we understand, you know, how we come across to others and how others come across to us without judgment. That's the critical piece. This is all about understanding and no judgment. Okay. So if we're talking about multicultural communication and multicultural relationship building, which is the focus of this class, what do you hope to learn? You know, what would be a good takeaway for you? And this I'd love to hear from everybody. Anthony, you want to start us off, my friend? Go ahead.
So I hope to learn more about how to be more sensitive and be more respectful to people's like terminology or just things that go on in cultures that I may not be aware of. So I could be respectful in a business setting.
Okay, excellent. And, you know, Anthony, if we don't talk about, if you are still unaware, which by the way, you will be, because this is just kind of a high level thing, make sure you ask me about that because I have a couple of ideas on how to make sure we are aware. Okay, thank you. Great to start us off. Who else wants to weigh in?
I will. I think knowing the difference.
Carly, I'm sorry, my friend, I can hardly hear you.
Oh, no. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, good. Sorry. So I would say knowing the difference between understanding and approaching someone's culture and what their background is versus prejudice and some of the bad sides of that and what to avoid.
Oh my God. That's a great one. Okay, and Carly, if I don't bring that up directly, when we go to Q&A at the end, make sure you just say, so tell me about how to do this, because, you know, we have ideas. All right, good. Pat, how about you? What are you thinking?
Actually, I probably should have waited in on the last question because right now I work in hardscape sales, so we do stuff like outdoor living, patios, driveways, and I sell a lot of pavers and retaining wall. A lot of our customers actually are Hispanic, so I do have a lot of multicultural interactions on a day-to-day basis from a lot of different I guess people and a lot of different cultures that come into my store.
Okay, so they're coming into your store, right? Pat, I just want to make sure they come into the store.
Correct.
And so and is there one particular culture that you encounter most often?
Definitely, I would say definitely Hispanic is
Okay.
like the most common that comes in. But I mean, there's also a little bit of everything too. It's not just one culture that comes in.
Excellent, excellent. Pat, that's wonderful. So when we get to the communication piece, maybe you can share with us some examples, you know, about the differences in communication, like what you ask, what you say, what they understand, what they don't understand. Because I think that will give us a really good light, practical information on what we're going to talk about, if you don't mind. Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, excellent. Thanks, Pat. Good. Jacqueline, you want to weigh in, my friend?
Sure. I would like to learn how to have successful multicultural interactions.
Okay, good. And what would success look like for you, Jacqueline? Like, what would be better?
I guess first recognizing that there is a multicultural interaction, because I know I said that I don't have any, but I'm thinking I have some and I
Okay.
haven't noticed it.
Yeah.
So first recognizing when it comes into play.
Yeah. Jacqueline, I want to stay with you for a moment on that because, you know, Jacqueline gave us a really interesting point. It's like, I don't really see it. And, you know, that's kind of good news and bad news because if you don't see it, then you've leveled your own playing field, Jacqueline, and that's a good thing. But is there something you should be in tune to? And that might be just this much. But, you know, Jacqueline, that's not a bad thing, actually, because I don't see anything either. And people ask me how, I was like, well, I deal with multicultural students all the time. So they're one of my students. I don't really see it. So yeah, but I think it's the sensitivity to what might be a little bit different in case. That was a good call out, Jacqueline. Thanks. Where am I? Hi, Melissa. You got one for me?
Hi. Yeah, so I should have answered on the last one, I guess. I actually go to an HBCU, so I'm around pretty diverse people every single day. And it's really opened my mind. I mean, I would say I was already pretty open-minded, but I've just learned so much. I continue learning every day. But for us, I guess like what I hope to learn and continue learning is like power imbalances and just how that affects people. Because I come across it all the time where people say things that wouldn't be offensive to them, but it's offensive to the other person. So I think just being really mindful of that and unconscious biases.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. You can tell I'm taking notes. So, all right. Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. Where am I? Hi, PJ. How are you?
I'm
You
good.
got
How
one
are
for
you?
me?
Yeah. I actually personally I come from I guess, multicultural background. I'm a first generation American. So for me, I've always had interactions with different cultures by privilege of me coming from a different culture.
Yeah, yeah.
In my current everyday interactions, I do meet with people primarily of a similar culture to mine. But there are times when I meet with people who do come from a different background or come a different understanding, and I'm like cognizant of that. I will hope to learn to be a little bit more empathetic to different struggles other than the ones I'm familiar with.
Yeah, great. You know, PJ, that's an excellent one. And if I ever brought up the empathy and struggles, okay, in the communication piece, ask me when we get to Q&A. Okay, thanks, PJ. Good. Did I get everybody? I don't know that I did. Wait till I look. I guess I did. Carlene, did I get everybody? I think I did.
Yeah, it looks like it.
All right, guys, thanks. This really gives me a foundation to build in your needs to this class, as you know. Okay. All right, so let's look at this. So there's a little model, and again, I don't want you to think I'm going down in the world of academics, but this model is crazy good. It really is, all right? And then we're going to look at characteristics and distinctions. All right, so let's take a look at this model, all right? And we did this already, so I'm going to just jump over it since you did such a great explanation. All right. So, you know, when we look to understand people, okay, it's not, you know, it's a little bit of empathy, but you haven't really walked in their shoes because you're not necessarily like them. So you have to understand why people behave the way they do. Sometimes it's culturally oriented. Sometimes it's ingrained because it's a family tradition. Sometimes it's an interpretation of how others around them act, but a cultural understanding looks at behaviors. It's not just, I get you. It's what did they do that you need to understand. And if you look at the way people behave, that's really what prevents the misunderstanding, because you get that this is a cultural thing that allows them to behave in this way. It's really kind of wild that once you become in tune to that it's not a head, it's really about behaviors. You really find it so much easier to pick up on what people do. It's absolutely crazy. And I'll give you an example of this. So in my Harrisburg University, where I also teach, I teach in the master's program, and I would say 80% of my students are international students. Okay. So the first week, I go through an orientation with them just to get them, to know each other, to know me, to know how the course is set up, and so on and so forth. And, and I tell them exactly what I told you, which is, if you have a question, interrupt me. If you have a question, raise your hand, don't wait till the end. And this went on for 3 weeks and there was no questions. It's like, it's kind of odd. And yet their assignments, these are master's level assignments, okay, weren't right. So finally in week 4, I said, guys, I'm not understanding why you won't ask questions. That was the behavior. All I wanted them to do was interrupt me or raise their hand and ask a question. And at that point in time, I had a lot of Asian students in my class. They said, Marian, we are taught to respect authority and we question no one. Eye-opening, because I was like, are they afraid of me? Are they embarrassed to ask in front of the group? They were taught not to ask questions. And I said, okay, let's go back. And, so I had to reinforce that every single week. And then I started to call on them. So I'd say, okay, so PJ, weigh in, what question do you have for me? And I would, it's kind of like I forced PJ to say something. And then Anthony, you want to weigh in? You look like you had a question. And then they got used to asking questions. But until I kind of pushed the issue, they wouldn't ask any questions, which was unbelievable. So that's a minor behavior, guys, that if you think about it at work, you get this. Okay. And then, they leave, then people leave and you don't get what you need, or you don't get it by the deadline. And it could be because they are taught not to ask questions, or are uncomfortable asking questions, or don't understand the nuances in the language that you use. So this is really, and this is real basic stuff, guys. I'm not talking about like anything really big, but that was just a little example of something that I could share with you. And as soon as I got that, I was like, oh, guys, believe me, I'm not telling you that the way you were raised or what you were told is wrong. Here's what I need from you so I can help you learn. And as soon as I was able to kind of, put us together rather than the students versus me, I put us together, they kind of loosened up and knew it was okay to ask questions. It was amazing. But I didn't disrespect the differences. I didn't understand the differences. And so I couldn't adjust. But as soon as I understood it, every class going forward, no problem. No problem. Okay. Also, guys, if I had said, okay, so, like I'm really annoyed that your assignments are wrong. And if you just asked me questions, we wouldn't have this problem. What do you think would happen to them asking questions based on the way I just came across to you? Think they're going to ask? Why do you think not, Anthony? Didn't I sound like an open, friendly person? Not really. Yeah. So, if you want someone to do something or to work with you, you have to make sure that your message isn't demanding. It is collaborative. It is a partnership. It is the sense of let's work this out together. And that, my friends, is really at the heart of this cultural understanding. If you will use simple words and stay away from acronyms, you will find that their understanding of working together soars. But if you use, Jacqueline, all those wonderful government acronyms that we need, that we need a dictionary for, they're going to be lost, as an example. Okay, so this is real basic stuff, guys, but it's a minor change in the way you come across and observe to tune into how you can appreciate a cultural difference. Okay, any questions on that, my friends? No? Okay. All right, so this is my Lewis model. Okay, and I put this in your workbook for you also, but guys, this is like amazing. So if I think I might be able to do this. I don't know. Okay, I'll try. All right, so if we look at the, oh, hallelujah, it works. So if we look at the three main parts of the triangle, okay, that is where the angles start. And if that you go from multi-active down to linear active, which I'm going to explain to you in a minute, okay, you see that people become less talkative and warm and a little more cool and factual. The key in the upper left-hand corner describes. If we go down the other arm, okay, we are very warm, emotional, and talkative. And then as we go down and we hit the yellow, okay, these people could be good listeners. Again, think of my Asian students. Good listeners will do what they can, but wouldn't ask a question if it killed them, okay? And then when we go from yellow over to blue, the yellow, again, looking at the key, a compromiser, super friendly, very good listener, sure, whatever you want, over to, we got to get her done. This is what's going to happen. This is what we need to do. And so you can see as the dots change colors along the color gradation, they pick up either a mix of behaviors or they go closer to the behaviors, okay, of the ends. All right, so if I had to look, all right, so in the US, we are this linear active, we are one step above that, okay? We are, this is what we need to do. What are your facts? This is what we got to get it done. Where's the goal? What's the plan? What steps are you going to take? That's who we are. That's how we operate in business. That's how we work. Okay. But then if you go up to here, okay, and you look at this culture, they're like, well, you know, Pat, help me out with this one. So what would your Hispanic clients say to you about buying hardscape? Okay, they're way up top here at this multi-active. Are they kind of excited when they come in? Are they, I'll bet you're really factual about this is what it takes, this is the size, this is the specs. Arch, that's not a bad thing, Pat, I'm just guessing. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so how are they? What are they reacting to? What do they sound like to you?
I really like, I really think it's like, it so depends on the person. Like, I don't think this is true for every single Hispanic or every single human being out there. I think it just really depends on the person. But yeah, I do see a lot of people who are Hispanic and from Mexico and Argentina. I do see a lot of them like more laid back and more just willing to talk, and like they'll kind of like go with the flow. Like they're not like, versus people at my work who are from the US, they're a little more like, this is what needs to be done. This is how to do it, like kind of step by step. So I guess I see a little bit of that, but I still think it depends on the individual person rather than like this person's this person's that. I think it all depends on the actual person.
Good call out, Pat. Thanks. All right. Well, here's where I am. Would you say that that's true? Warm, emotional, talkative, and probably impulsive. What do you think? You've known me 2 weeks. Got any guesses? Thank you for laughing, PJ. That's exactly who I am. Okay. I mean, even though I work in this linear active, like, let's get the facts, let's do it. If you have a good idea, well, I asked you at the beginning, what do you hope to learn? And every one of you, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. There I am. And that is who I am. It's, I emote, I, am excited. I am demonstrative. That's the bad news with a camera. You got this going on, but that is who I am. Okay. So where are you on this? That's my discussion question. Where are you and how do you behave? Again, from a cultural perspective, I am United States in business, but the person that I am is all about emotions and building relationships and super talkative and wanting to get to know you. So where are you guys on this? And how do you react?
And Anthony has his hand up. So Anthony, we'll let you go.
Thank you. I'm kind of where you are a little bit, Marian. I have an Italian background, so definitely right there is where I could see myself. However, as I'm growing and evolving as a person, I see myself heading more towards the right side of the triangle, probably about where the bright orange is.
Okay.
I definitely grew up being more of that light, kind of like salmon pinkish color where you are. I definitely see myself becoming more of like an orange now.
Wow. Okay. And again, guys, this isn't, and Pat started us off with not everybody is like this. True. But, if you met a person from this culture, chances are, this is how they're going to come across. So yeah, Anthony, you see yourself a little bit on the Italian side, but, a little bit more on the orangey side. And that's fine because where do you think that comes from? Where do you think the orangey side starts to come out?
So I definitely is not on my familial linearity because my family is Austrian and Italian, so it would put me strictly on the left. I just think my more experiences with people from other cultures working and kind of just interacting with people have made me more towards the right side.
Oh, wow. Good call out. PJ, can I ask you to pick? So cultural perspective, not you necessarily, but your family. Where do you think they fall in this and how do they exhibit communication relationships with each other?
I think kind of falls more on like the reddish, orangish side of things, like culturally, as far as, the talkative and the personality, and when it comes to their like, business ways, and it comes to them, with familiar relationships, when you have a lot of people kind of coming from that same place, things can kind of become a little bit, intense as far as conversation or talking or kind of making a decision.
I'll bet.
So yeah.
Excellent. So this, guys, is anybody else want to weigh in? Thank you, PJ. Anybody else want to weigh in? No? Okay. So it's just a continuum of behaviors. That's all this is. It's a visual representation of a continuum of behaviors. So the closer you are to the points of the triangle, the more personal characteristics come out. So I think, Anthony, you're absolutely right. My personal characteristics are in that, salmon area, but my business characteristics are blue. Okay. And so, and that, my friends, we got to learn. And Anthony, I think you said that the more that I'm in business, the more I learned to adapt. Yeah. So you start to see how things need to change based on who you meet, where you work, what the environment calls for, etc. Okay, does that sort of make sense or not make sense? All right, so this is that visual continuum. All right, so let's move on. Come on. There we go. Okay, so I'm definitely not going to read this to you because this is in your workbook. But if you really want what you need to know, okay, what does multi-active mean? What does reactive mean? What does linear active mean? Beyond this key, then you should look at these tables. So if you looked at, linear active as, the key sort of summarized it, but really what is you're looking at, linear active is kind of US business, right? Sticks to the fact, plans ahead, sets goals, very logical in approach, etc. Okay. And for a person who's like, oh, let's wing it, that's going to be tough because, I don't need that. I don't want that structure, but linear active does. So we've got to figure out how to work together so we can be comfortable together. If we were in multi-active, let me go back. That's the top. Okay, that's the top. So we were in multi-active. That's kind of what PJ was talking. It's like a free-for-all. There's a lot of conversation going on. People are talking, tough to make decisions, a lot of things going on, very emotional in a good way, because people are invested in each other, all right? But in this one, the big difference is facts here, in multi-active, feelings first, okay? And then when we get to reactive, that's our low, oops, sorry guys. That's our lower right part of the triangle, okay? It is non-confrontational, very polite, a little more reactive, and not as in, oh my God, what did you just say? But they won't react until you make a statement and ask for an action or a reaction, right? So that's kind of important. Very polite, plays by the rules. And again, think about my example with the Asian population, respectful of adults, respectful of authority, follows the rules, doesn't challenge the status quo, etc. Okay, so those types of things really start to help you understand how you can relate or not, as the case may be, to people. Okay, questions on this? Questions on this? Okay, I know I have a discussion question coming up, but I have a different one I want to ask you. Of these three, just looking at this, which type do you think you'd have the most difficulty reacting to, working with, communicating with? Which of those three? And this isn't a bias, guys, but knowing who you are and knowing how people can be different, which one might be most difficult for you and why?
I am linear active, so the one that I would have the most difficulty dealing with is the multi-active, because I like to stick to facts, and sometimes they have feelings over facts, so it would be like very hard for me. Like, I just want the facts. I just want to get down to the answer. I don't want to go round and round. Just want to go directly to the solution. So yes.
But Jacqueline, don't you think if we kind of got to know each other a little bit better and talked it out, we could figure it out and a better way to approach it? Don't you think?
I'm sure, yes.
But you're going to say, we're going to the facts. Yeah, okay.
So we also had Anthony and Pat raise their hand.
Oh, great. So Jacqueline, that's what I'm going to try to get you to do. So, Jacqueline, maybe if we just talked about it a little bit, maybe we could see it in a different way. But you're going, facts. Good woman. Excellent. I'm sorry, Carlene, who?
Pat and then Anthony.
Awesome. Okay, Pat, you're up. Thank you, Carlene.
Yeah, me personally, I probably have a hard time working with a person who's reactive only because it says indirect. I don't like when I'm working with somebody and they don't know what they want, or they're not being like one way or the other. They're just kind of like they don't know what they want and they just can't make up their mind. It's like I can't stand when somebody comes in and they're all over the place. It's like you should have came in here already knowing what you want and already knowing, your next move. And that's the only thing I really see in reactive, but I don't like when people are interactive rather than just tell me how it is.
Oh, Pat, that was great. And do we see Pat is linear active? Of course we do. He wants a decision. He wants the facts. He wants to, do a deal and make it work. And Pat, I absolutely see where you're coming from, because the reactive is going to come in and listen to you and go, oh, that sounds really good. And then you're going to tell them something else and they're going to go, and that sounds really good. And they're never going to come through with a potentially, not initially anyway, with the right thing, because I don't want to offend you. So sometimes when you get to this reactive side, you might have to ask a question like, so what do you think? Which one do you prefer? So Pat, pushing an answer sometimes helps. I'm not gonna say all the time, but sometimes helps, because you're right, everything looks good. And all of your choices that you presented all look good. And it's going to be very difficult for them to make a decision. Totally get where you're coming from. Thank you, my friend. Wonderful. Anthony, what do you think? Which one would be most difficult for you to work with?
So I kind of see myself having qualities of both the linear active and multi-active. However, reactive would probably be the one I'd be most incompatible with.
Okay,
I think it would be a lot of the never confronts would be more of the problem. I'm the type of person where if there is an issue or something at hand, I'd rather find some way to de-escalate and make everyone happy in some sense and confront the problem more than hide it away. So reactive would probably be the number one most incompatible for me, because I could see myself with the linear and multi-active categories. Certain things are more me than
Excellent.
both.
Anthony, that was an excellent example, because you're going to get more often than not, whatever you want to do is fine. I mean, that's how non-confrontational. It's like, that's fine. That's fine. It's like, oh, you have to have an opinion. No. Okay. And guys, I'll give you an example of, again, my class. So I started this class on Monday night and I gave them the holiday schedule, and I can flex my weeks based on this holiday schedule. And all I wanted them to tell me was, do they like the holiday schedule or do they want to change it? Here's how many answered. They said, okay, I can make the decision and this will be the holiday schedule, but I'm giving you a choice. And Anthony, I couldn't get them to weigh in. They were like, whatever you think. And I'm like, okay. So, yes, reactive is that super polite person, and it's going to be very difficult for them to speak out. Yeah, I think that's a good call out. Thank you, guys. Great examples. Okay, let's move on. We did the find yourself and give yourself examples. Great. So let's look at cultures in different ways. High context cultures and low context cultures. And then so the one that we talked about before, the Lewis model, was more about kind of personality and behaviors. Okay. This will give you an idea in the business sense, kind of a little idea in the business sense. So of course, I don't read except for definitions. So high context and low context communication refers to the degree to which speakers rely on factors other than illicit speech to convey their message. So Pat, this will make you crazy, because it's all those implied things that some people look at and make decisions on and also read between the lines. So that's what we're looking at, high context and low context. All right, so let's take a look at the rest of this and see what else we can learn. So here, and again, it's a continuum, and we don't need to necessarily talk about this. But when we look at it, all right, we look at how relationships mean more than the message, or how the work means more than the relationship. And I'll show you that in a moment, right? So it's really kind of important that, you know, you understand how people make decisions. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with the feeling they get by being with you. And I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but that's where this background information comes from a cultural perspective. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Okay, so in a high context culture, let's look, okay, high context, mid to right, okay. All right. Information is nonverbal, okay, and emphasis is always on relationships, okay. So, Carly, if you and I have been friends for a long time and you referred someone to me, that's all I need to know. I don't know what they're like, but I know you. And that makes the relationship work for us. Okay. So this long-term relationships and loyalty, I got your back, Carly, and Carly has mine. Right. And that's unspoken, guys. It's all based on relationships. She's there for me. I'm there for her. And I've never said once to her, Carly, I got your back. She knows by our relationship that I've got her back and vice versa. Okay. So it's unspoken. All right. Unwritten rules. So Melissa and I also have, a high context cultural relationship. And, we've never agreed to any of this, but Melissa knows that, if we set a time, I'm going to keep my commitments and she's going to keep hers. If I make a promise, I'm going to keep it and she's going to keep it to me. So we don't have any rules about, okay, every time you say, I promise, you must do it. Every time we make an appointment, we will keep it. We know this is how we work because of the culture that we are working in, right? It's unwritten rules are taken for granted. This is how we work. This is how we talk. This is when we meet. This is what we need. And we don't state it, we understand it, okay? And so if I wanted, Anthony, if I wanted you to do some work for me, I'd say, send me a W-9. And Anthony's going to go, well, don't you want a resume? Don't you want my references? And don't you want, no, we're good. Just send me so I get you paid. All right. So here it's all about relationships, loyalty, and trust when you're on this side. Okay. When you're on this side. Okay. Let's move on. And so, what's the preferences for communication? All right. I don't have to say very much. Okay. I could say, okay, Carly, we're going back to us being best buds. I'm going to say, hey, Carly, I need your help. She's there. Okay. I don't have to go into letter and verse, how long it's going to take, what I need her to do. She's going to help me. Okay. And she shows up. All right. And so, this nonverbal communication could be, I don't have to give her deadlines. She knows that this is when she's going to give me the work that I need. We talked about it. She knows. It's the sense of urgency is there. It's not going to be, I made 4 phone calls and that's when she showed up with her work. Right? So there's a lot of nonverbal communication. And for us, low context people, that makes us crazy because it's like, how come you didn't let me know? Okay. If you've ever said, how come you didn't let me know? Chances are you're working with a person from a high context culture and nonverbals are all you need. Okay. And you don't. You want to know the reasons why, you want the facts. Okay. And also the next one, guys, so Anthony, back to you. I sent, listen, I've got this really cool consulting assignment. You'll start on Monday. Everything you'll work out, it'll work out. You can make it work. Great. Just get me your W9 and I'll see you Monday. Now, what did I tell him? Not much. Okay. But I didn't send him a contract. I didn't give him a start date and time. I didn't need letter and verse. He and I agreed that we would work together. And again, high context, guys, it's all about relationships. I can rely on him. He can rely on me. We'll figure it out when we get together. Talk about loosey-goosey, but that's what high context cultures do. Okay. All right. And again, as I said, it's all about long-term relationships. And it's not that we've needed to know each other for decades, but it's not like at the end of this class in 7 weeks, we will all say bye-bye, probably, right? Okay. But maybe some people say, well, you know what, maybe we should continue to maintain communication. Let's keep in touch. Let's do. Great. So when you make the plans for longer term relationships, that's what high context is all about. Not all the time, but that's the crux of it. All right. And as you can see, relationships are way more important than schedules. Right. And I think the last one is kind of interesting. Anybody want to take a stab at what you think that means? There's a distinction between in the group and out of the group. Got any ideas? If this is high context and it's all about relationships, what do you think that between in group and out of the group means? What are your thoughts?
Probably
Right
like
there.
Carly?
being,
Yeah, great.
yes. Sorry. I guess it's kind of like being in a clique, like you all kind of understand each other and have that implicit relationship, and anybody who's new is probably going to be missing a whole lot of those subtleties that group knows about.
There you go. There you go. So Carly, if there's 7 of us, 8 of us on tonight, if you had to pick between the 8 of us to help you or some outside person, what do you think your go-to is going to be?
I mean, in the context of this class, like if it was about this class, I would stick with you guys,
Yeah. Okay. Because we have something in common. And Carly, that was perfect. The subtleties of the group. We have the direction from this class. We all have something in common. That's in the group. Okay. And so those people in the group go to the people in the group. And it's not to the exclusion of others, but boy, those others need to prove themselves to belong. And Carly, I think I like the idea of clique. It has a bad connotation, but it's kind of like that. So we'll just call it the in group. Okay. Good job. Excellent. All right. So let's flip the script. Okay. The low context cultures. And I kind of think this is us. I don't want to, speak for all of us, but let's take a peek at this slide because I described the high context. Let's look at the low context. Okay. Which one or ones do you live by? Because I think this is most of us. Professionally, personally, it might be the high context, but professionally, it's probably this. So which ones do you live by? And again, think about your jobs, think about the people you work with, think about the people you may have gone to school with.
Carly's got her hand up. Carly, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my entire job is to make everybody else fit into a low context situation. Pretty sure that's my entire job in project management, is just making sure everybody's being absolutely clear. We get everything in writing. We make everything very linear. And on the blue corner of the Lewis model, the linear active. It's my whole job, what I do every day.
And you know what? Talk about the long-term, the short-term relationships, guys. You know, at work, short-term relationships or long-term relationships. And I know some of you have been at your jobs longer than others, but you know, how would you characterize your relationships at work? Short or long-term, or even if it's a mix, that's fine. Just tell me what it is and why. There's no wrong answer in this class. You know that, right?
Well, Marion, while
Mine-
everybody's thinking, Jacqueline did have her hand up too, so maybe.
You
we
know
can-
what, Carlene, I have no hands on my end. So
I know,
thanks
that's
for,
why I'm calling you.
I got nothing going on here in case you're wondering why I look like a deer in headlights. Go ahead, Jacqueline. What do you think?
I've been focused on short-term relationships and I've been at my job for a very long time, but I can understand why long-term relationships would be of importance.
Okay. Can you give me why do you think short-term is applies to you?
So just like in meetings, and I have meetings usually with the same people, I would never ask questions like, how's your family? What are you doing this weekend? I would keep it strictly to the meeting topic.
Yes. Okay. So the relationships are a professional. Okay. And there isn't that bond. And what if you change departments tomorrow? Would it matter? Jacqueline, would it matter if
I don't think it would matter for me. Like I said, I've been focused on short term, but I want to focus more on long term.
Yeah, good. Okay. So, oh, I'm gonna write that down.
Okay, and while you're writing that down, Anthony would like to chime in also.
Go ahead, Anthony.
So I wanted to kind of talk about the avoid misunderstandings bullet point. So I'm still a senior in college, but I'm currently working 2 internships, one with a corporate office and one with the basketball team. So I kind of have a bit of understanding about the avoiding misunderstandings. So we work in a fully remote environment for both of them, and we have international like interns on our team. So making sure we are as clear as possible with what we are doing in language that everyone understands is great for the avoiding misunderstandings, especially for more of a termed relationship.
Excellent. So I love, all right, so 2 things. Virtual is like the kiss of death for some. Okay, because it's like, you know what I mean, right? You know what I need, right? No. Okay. If you were next to me, there's a whole different context that we get, right? But that virtual environment can almost be a killer. So yeah, paying attention to those details. And Anthony, I love what you said, using a simple language. And I'm not saying dummy down, but you know, you don't need, you know, $5 words when a quarter word will do it. Because everybody understands. That's so smart. Yes, awesome. Especially virtually. Okay. You know, guys, I'm going to weigh in and say, you know, I'm short-term, Jacqueline, except for some. But you know, I've worked on so many different projects. As you guys recall from last week, Carlene and I are both consultants. Well, you know, a gig ends, and unfortunately, most of the relationships do too. I mean, there might be 1 or 2, maybe, but you know, where you had like a team of people or a lot of people in the organization that you're working with, once that contract is over, you know, you're on to the next. And so some relationships I hold on to. So Jacqueline, they would be the ones that have a meaning for me, okay, versus the rest of the world, right? So short term is kind of just how we work. It's project based, it's team based, it's department based. And you know, when that changes, on to the next. Okay. Melissa, do you think you'll see those short-term relationships or long-term in law school and then as an attorney? Which one do you think you?
I think if you want to be successful, you need long-term relationships because it's completely based off of networking and maintaining those relationships.
Sure.
And I was kind of stuck because I think the subject matter of the law is very like high context. Like I think it's just very much based off of like, I don't know. I was stuck between these 2. But I think short-term relationships are also very common because like for me, I work in personal injury. So you're just working with people through the course of like their treatment and then you're just moving on. But it's kind of both.
Absolutely. Good example, Melissa. And I'm thinking also the judges would be, long-term relationships because, Melissa's already prepared. She presents her case concisely, factually. It's easy she explains it well, and I think that long-term relationship, Melissa, with I'm thinking the judges is probably the one. And then the other ones, yeah, you move on because it's next client. Yeah. So guys, you have to think about these and why they're different. Okay. Melissa, if you don't mind, I'm going to weigh in. Do you agree about the judges? Like you would want long-term relationships. You would want them to know who they are, who you are, and you want them to know who, and you want to know who they are, right?
Yeah, especially if I would like to win the case, I would hope I have a good relationship with them over time. And an attorney told me the other day that as you get to know judges, you can become more casual. But when you first meet them, I mean, you always have to be professional and you'll learn their rules because each judge has different rules for their courtroom.
Yes.
So,
yes. And, Melissa, I'm thinking also it's not that one might be more favorable. I think they will be more favorable to you than not, but you'll understand what their hot buttons are and how to, play with the communication based on, the culture of the courtroom. And again, guys, don't be so literal when we think about it as, our cultural differences with people. Sometimes that organizational, culture plays in, and that culture of the courtroom, I think, is at high and low context also. I could see it happening for both. Yeah. Really smart. Thanks, Melissa. I really appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in? Carly, did I have any other hands?
Nope, you're fine.
Okay, cool beans. All right. So the point of this, my friends, is to make sure that you see that there's like two sides and you got to figure out, where people are coming from. So, if I'm working with Jacqueline and she is low context, I shouldn't go, well, how stupid is that? Can't you be a little more flexible? Because now that's the judgment side coming out. No, this is how she works. This is what she needs. And she might have to explain to me why. Okay. And as soon as she gives me why things need to be done as such, I'm on board. I'm on board. Sometimes the why helps you bridge the high and low context because I'm only looking, well, you're just writing down a set of instructions. Like, why do we need to write them down? Okay. And as soon as Jacqueline explains it to me, I go, I get it. All right. So sometimes the explanation helps to bridge those cultural gaps. Just keep that in mind. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay. All right. So, we low context people. What does this look like? All right. And Anthony, you started us off with the first one: direct, simple, clear messages. Let's not write War and Peace when you're sending an email. Okay. The message gets muddied. So what does it look like? And how can we be clear in what we need each other to do, right? And also this in low context, low use of nonverbals, okay? So if I went, okay, in Italian, you would know, you've got to be kidding me, okay? But that is high context. In low context, you're sitting there going, what? All right, so nonverbals don't help in low context because they don't have that kind of meaning as it would in a high context, right? High reliance on written communication, we've already talked about that. Facts for evidence, we talked about that. And I think the second last one is really important, okay? Because here's where relationships are tested, right? Schedules are more important than relationships. Okay. So PJ, I don't care that I love you to death. Friday, 2:00, I need that report. Don't give me any excuses. I don't care. I want it on my desk. And sometimes, and I've been extreme when I said it, but there's no I understand in low context. Okay. So, if PJ comes to me and says, oh, Mary, like yesterday was just hell at home. I had a couple family members sick and I'm a little behind on my work. High context says, PJ, I'm so sorry to hear that. I understand. Get the report to me when you can. A low context culture says, well, PJ, you got 3 hours to get her done. Okay. So you want to look at this and help people understand how to maneuver between high, I understand, and low, get her done. So how do you think you can do that? Have you encountered that with people that you work with, either customers, colleagues, fellow students, Anthony, where one kind of plays it loosey-goosey and the other person really needs it done at a particular time? How do you have a meeting of the minds between high and low cultures? Because this is really the issue right here. This context is the issue. What do you think? How do you have a meeting of the minds?
I don't really think that we have been able to kind of perfect
Agreed.
that aspect of meeting high and low context. I really think within our respective circles, we can come to a resolution when it comes to meeting a compromise, but in certain work cultures and business cultures, some resolve just can't be made. You're working with different people with different personalities and cultural backgrounds along with business preferences.
Yeah.
So trying to accommodate all of that, I don't think we have perfected that as a business or work culture. I think the appropriate thing to do would be to have empathy for the person's situation, coming together and saying, hey, I understand, everything that's going on at home. You may not be able to meet that deadline at 2:00. However, when can you get that project to me, within a reasonable amount of time, because I have a deadline myself, like I'm getting it from you, but then I have to present it to, my boss. So when do you think, how can we come to some resolution? But I think someone's going to lose in that situation. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's a perfect, because I want what I want, the other person want what they want, and we can't come to a perfect solution. So I don't really think we can really meet. That's my opinion on it. I don't think between the low and a high context situation, we have been able to perfect that.
Okay. Any thoughts on what Anthony says? Because of course I'm going to weigh in, but you guys want to weigh in? Any
PJ.
thoughts? Or PJ, sorry about that. Any thoughts? Okay. First of all, PJ, the way you handled it was perfecto. Okay, because it showed high context. I'm so sorry, and empathy. I'm so sorry to hear, about the struggles at home. I'm sure it put you behind. So right then and there, he was very empathetic. Great. But then he said, however, okay, I need to get my work done and I'm waiting on yours. So he asked a question, when can you get it done? So you didn't let me off the hook, PJ, but you asked me for that deadline. Okay, and if I said Tuesday, that's the wrong answer. So you could say, Monday at 9, what's the end result? What do you need it by? Okay, so, but you handled it perfectly. That's the way to bridge. And the last thing he did, and guys, I'm doing this for a reason, because this is the bridge. He explained to me why it was important for me to get it done. And that is, he has to turn it in and he has to incorporate what I give him in his report. And his boss is waiting for both of us. And you know what, PJ? Perfect. Because there was so you cared about the relationship. You were empathetic to my issue, but you said, but we still got to get her done together. So I wouldn't make any changes. I thought you did a great job on that. FYI.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So there's a way. If he was like, well, that's just too bad. Okay. Get to your desk. You got an hour. You got 3 hours, like I said to you before. Well, that would be low, talking to high, no empathy, no weeness, no nothing. Just get her done and meet that commitment, meet those goals. But PJ bridged it beautifully. So you have to think about, and think of it, he didn't let me off the hook. I still have to do the report, but he did a nice job in bridging between high and low. Okay, well done. Good. Okay. This is not easy, guys. This is always like top of mind. It's a totally different way to communicate rather than being, there's a way to still get her done, but to be empathetic and understanding. Okay. All right. So guys, think about some of the people that you work with or in class with. Sorry, Anthony, but think of people that you're in class with, that you encounter in business, that you work with. How would you recognize whether they're high or low context people? How would what would be the key factors that you'd use to recognize high or low context, do you think? And we spent a little time on discussions, just kind of thinking through this, but what are your thoughts? Carlene, you want to play through this with me?
Sure. You want me to answer the question?
You think I'm high or low context?
So when I first started working with Marion, I was low context, and we have, but we have come to the point where we're so high context, we almost can read each other's minds.
But we've worked together for a long time. Okay. But when we started, my friends, okay, she was low context. What do I mean by low context? This is exactly what needs to be done by when. And I was high context. How did I come across, Carly?
Oh my God, you were exhausting.
I'll fit it in. I'll get it done. Don't worry. So, when you look at these two, now we could have divorced after a few months together going, oh, this is not going to work. But we figured it out because she knew where I was coming from and I knew what she needed. And we figured out how to bridge, much like PJ shared with us. Okay. So, but it's easy to recognize, guys, because those behaviors are screaming in your face. They're always talking about deadlines. They're always talking about to-do lists. They're always talking about facts. That is low context.
But Marion, I will jump in on this, is because we consciously chose to end up at high context. But I work with other people that prefer the relationship to be low context, and I just need to understand and respect that. So we worked a different angle, but there are cultural differences that I can't make them be me or want to have a relationship with me. I just need to look at the things you pointed out and say, I know that's where from where the lens that they want to come from. So I go to them in that way.
Okay, so there was our example. What's yours? I think I've heard from mostly everybody, but who wants to weigh in? Nobody wants to think about the low and high context. cultures? All right, that's a homework assignment anyway. That's okay. You'll have plenty of time to think about it. Okay, so guys, Carlene and I also just talked about how we shifted our styles. Okay, how do you think you might have to shift your style to work with someone of a different context than you? Whether it's high, if you're high, they're low. If you're low, they're high. How do you think you're going to have to shift?
And Anthony has his hand up before you could finish speaking. So we'll let Anthony jump in.
So at least for me, just kind of relating to this with high and low context people, something that's really helped me is becoming more flexible and more open to deadlines. I'm the type of person where I stick to an itinerary through my daily life and through what I need to do in my professional advancement. So being able to kind of be more flexible and open to new deadlines and new suggestions, or maybe different ways of completing a task, have been really helpful to vary on the context of the person I'm speaking with.
So smart. So smart. Anybody else want to weigh in? No? Okay. So Anthony, I'm going to pick up another one. Okay. Two other ones. He's flexible. Check. He listens. Check. He observes. Check. Right? Because if you listen to a person's words, you're going to hear if they're high or low context. If they're it's like, let's get together and figure it out. They're all about relationships, high context. If it's like, look, let's just, which task do you want? I'll take the other one. That's low context. If you listen to how people communicate with you and how they either A, want to get together, or B, want to work independently with divvied up assignments, you can tell whether they're high or low context. Okay. And sometimes it's culturally driven. Sometimes it's personal style driven. Sometimes it's business driven. But your job in these business relationships, my friends, is to figure out how to work with someone else. That's the whole goal. How do I successfully work with someone else? And you guys are armed with this information so you can be, as Anthony said, flexible. You can make the adjustments. You can understand. You can appreciate. Okay. Questions? All right.
Yes, I have a quick question.
Yep.
So what do you do when you're in a group of high context and low context, situation where you have multiple people who, okay, you might be the flexible person, but you have a high context person in the group and a low context person in the group. How do you bridge everyone together to have a good working relationship and for results?
I think that's a great question. Anybody want to take a stab at it? That's a great question. Happens all the time. No? Okay. All right. So guys, sometimes, at least this is how I do it, and it's kind of worked okay. I become the interpreter. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm listening to this high context person, PJ, and I'm going to say, okay, so PJ, is this what we're talking about? So I'm going to ask him clarifying questions. All right. Then I'm going to turn to Carly and I say, okay, Carly, so just so we're on the same page, I think this is, what we're looking at. Is that right, PJ? What do you think, Carly? So I have to be the one who's like the facilitator of the conversation, because I have to interpret or fill in the blanks, kid you not, for high context. And then I've got to kind of repeat it or ask questions in a different way to the low context person to make sure they understood it. Because if it was just you and Carly, this is what's happening in the conversation. And then you leave going, I wonder what that was all about. Okay. So if you're in the middle, act as that facilitator. Okay. Even if it's like, PJ, like you made the question. So Carly, I think PJ is really onto something. How do you bridge a conversation between high context and low context people. So I paraphrased what he kind of talked around from a relationship and a story perspective. And I phrased it in the form of a question to Carly. So that was my way to interpret also. So sometimes, PJ, if you take what I said and phrase it, make a statement like that, what a great idea. Carly really wants us, to consider A, B, and C. What are your thoughts? So if you facilitate a conversation like that, you're helping to balance the high and low context easily, because they're not listening to each other. They're doing this. And when they leave, they go, no idea. How does that sound, PJ? What do you think?
That sounds.
It sounds like what you maybe do now? Question mark?
Yeah, it sounds like a good starting place, and a good place to kind of be the interpreter. I never thought about that, being an interpreter between two people. It just got to be something getting used to doing.
Yes. Think about asking questions. Okay, what a great idea. Carly wants us to consider X. What do you think? So you've repeated what Carly said, but you've really asked the question. That's the interpretation. Okay, this is an idea. All right, so let's take a look at how this works in business. And I know we have like 9 minutes, and I'm going to be ending on time. I promise. Okay. All right. So I think, and PJ, this is kind of what we just talked about, but I put together this little matrices so we could take a look at it. All right. So if it's high context, remember, it's all about relationships. It's all about nonverbals. So if we say yes in high context, it's like, I get it. If we say yes in low context, it means we agree. I mean, and it's the same word, but when you change the context, you change the meaning. Okay. And then look at, in high context, silence is displeasure. But in low context, silence is thinking. And guys, I'm really aware of that silence. And so if I go silence, I don't want people to go, holy crap, she's disagreeing with what I said. I go, thinking, just so people know that silence doesn't mean disagreement. Silence means I got to process for a moment. And so I just say, thinking, and then I weigh in, okay, right? So when you look at these, excuse me, when you look at these compare and contrast, okay, you can see misinterpretation, okay? I think the fourth one is kind of interesting because that's what we talked about earlier. So business referrals in high context cultures, okay, where there's long-term relationships, where people know each other, where people trust each other, everything is done, I want to say everything, most times business is done through referrals, because I know someone and I know that if I know them and I've worked with them, you're going to love them and work with them too. Okay. In business, okay, in low context businesses, it's the example that Anthony and I played with. Where's your resume? Where's your references? Fill out an application, 5,000 interviews, and we'll let you know. Okay. So it's very, very different, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It means it's different. So if you have relationships with people and in high context cultures, and they're going, oh, listen, come on over. We'll figure out this business thing. No big deal. Okay, we'd love to work with you. Right then and there, that's high context. But if they're saying, well, who have you worked with? When was the last time you did this project? What success did you have? How did you fail? They're low context. So if you listen, you can tell which side of the context they're on just by how they talk. Okay. And guys, I'm playing this through in my head, and I see I've been involved with both sides. And when I was on the high context side, when people says, oh, we've heard all about you, come work with us. And I'm like, well, don't you want my resume? Why? Why? I mean, it was just like, because I didn't get it. So when people react to you differently, it's because of relationships on the left or facts on the right. And there's no wrong way, guys. It's just a style and a cultural difference. Okay, keep that in mind. All right. Okay. Just one quick question. I think I have time. I do. Who wants to comment on one of these that they've experienced, either in how they work or in one of them that took you by surprise, much like it took me by surprise when they said, come on in. Well, you know, we'd love to have you. And either how people work or one of them that took you by surprise.
I think I'm realizing that just today I watched two very high context people realize that one of them needed to be low context because they weren't getting anything done. And so it was a boss and someone that works for him. And he was like, I got to start managing this better. And I think just reading this now, it's like, oh, that's what happened.
Yes, because you know what, we've been friends for a long time, Carly, and we'll figure it out. We'll get it done.
Yeah.
But you know what? When there's a deadline at Friday at 3 o'clock, somebody's got to behave low context to get her done. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly right. Good. Carly, I'm interested to stay with you for a moment. Does high context apply in your world of forming partnerships in the nonprofit world?
In the nonprofit world, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of that is, it's hard, especially when you talk to donors, it's hard to talk about money. So you kind of have to have that like delicate dance of high context.
Yes.
Oh, good. You like us, right? Kind of thing,
Yes.
where you're not actually
Excellent.
spelling it out, but you know that, okay, based on this conversation, we have your support when we send that letter. Yes, in the nonprofit world, definitely. Project management is all low context, though.
Yes.
All of it.
Relationships, especially for donations, high context.
Mhm.
Excellent example, Carly. Excellent example. Okay, good. So let's move on. Okay, we got that. All right. So the last two slides, these are kind of just peaks, all right, because this goes back to, our cultural backgrounds and relationships, okay? What does it look like when you approach someone, all right? And that's really, really important because you want to make sure that you're professional but not stiff and that you're not super emotional but friendly. Okay, like if I approached any one of you like I behave in this class, I think you'd go, oh my God. Okay, so I have to dial it back. All right, so I can be passionate, but not effervescent, shall we say? All right, and it's really, and also you have to show interest in your tone of voice, in your excitement or enthusiasm for the conversation and for meeting people. This is really important, right? And if you're not comfortable, and Carlene talked about this last week, if you're not comfortable with eye contact, try to get comfortable. That's not a dead stare. But when you meet someone, you should look them in the eye and say hello warmly, okay? And so, I like to do the compare and contrast. So it's not emotional, it's passionate. And there's a difference, okay? Because emotional would be, you don't make sense, you're all over the board, but when you can speak with facts like Jacqueline loves, but with kind of an air of excitement in your voice, it demonstrates passion, a love for what you do. And people want to know that, okay? And then instead of dressing for work, dress for success, okay? What do you want to become? Okay, what do you want to look like? Now, this fist bump thing, okay, has changed totally since COVID. How do you handle shaking hands or fist bumps now? What do you do? Or how do you know what to do? Better question. Especially if the cultures are different. What do you do now? You
Anthony,
don't do anything?
Anthony has his hand up.
Okay. Carlene, I hate this. I can't see hands. All right, go ahead, Anthony.
I feel like it's kind of more observing the workplace environment you're in and through experimentation from others, watching what they're doing as a proper greeting could be the best way to determine what's workplace culturally accepted or just societally accepted in that specific environment. So if you see people fist bumping each other in a professional setting, or see like clients fist bumping with clients or handshaking, depending on the context, I think making that determination of experimenting while observing would be the best way to determine that and create that neutral approach.
Good. Okay. And then I'm going to add to Anthony's. Okay. I ask, do you shake hands? Okay, because even though, you know, most people are not wearing masks these days, they're still kind of phobic about, you know, shaking hands. And so I ask, do you shake hands? And if they say yes, then I extend. And there's nothing wrong with that because you want to honor and not infringe on the other person. Okay, so yeah, excellent. And then you know, you want to make sure you speak slowly and clearly, you're articulate, etc. But the last one of all the things on this slide is so important. Don't drop the F-bomb. Now I know that probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it seems like it's become part of our daily speech. So if you have a tendency to do that, please don't, okay? Because that's the kiss of death. And I'm not being smart when I say this. This is all about business etiquette. It's the kiss of death, okay? All right, so guys, what'd you think about tonight? Different question than on the slide. What'd you think about tonight? I want to go have dinner. Can you answer my question?
It was a good night.
Okay, what'd you like about it? What'd you like about it? What do you want changed?
I didn't know about the high context and low context. That was all new to me.
Oh, cool. Good call out, Pat. Thanks. Anybody else want to weigh in about tonight? What was you know, what'd you think? What do you want to, what'd you like? What do you want to change?
I thought the high context and low context was very like technical, which I kind of didn't expect with this type of course. I mean, it's very good information to know, but I really didn't expect it to kind of be that way to categorizing people, but I really enjoyed the material and learning that concept.
Good. Yeah, because, you know, Anthony and Pat, or PJ and Pat, the reason we wanted to include it is because it helps with understanding and it helps with relationships. If you get it, if you can see these differences, which are super subtle, you know, you get high in context and your understanding of how to work with others is heightened significantly. Okay, thanks guys. All right, so on page 12 in your workbook is the same thing that's on Blackboard Learn. So you're just gonna, you're gonna
drop them off. So I was going to cancel it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Can
Do we have
somebody
to go after 7?
Okay. So meet with someone from a different culture, and it doesn't have to be a formal meeting, but it could be, you know, lunch. It could be, you know,
Like Daniel.
it could be a casual conversation. But think of what you learned tonight, and think of where they fall on the Lewis model, and think about whether they were high or low context. Carly, you've already given those examples. You've done this already. So you could take what you've observed in today's meetings, and that would be your homework, because you're like, oh, I observed high context and here's how I figured it out. I observed low context and here's how I figured it out. Here's where they fell on the Lewis model. So you may have done this already, guys. All right, Carly has. So don't reinvent the wheel. Think about either a future meeting or a recent past meeting and answer the questions about how you could tell the differences. Okay. All right. Questions? My friends, it's been a blast. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate your contributions, participation, and stories. So be well, stay safe. See you next week. Good night, all.